Hi guys. Hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to create a custom agent in Notion. For today's creation, we're going to be creating a learning vault summarizer. Now, what does this do? Imagine the opportunity to basically log all your learnings through the week, be it from books, podcasts, movies, videos, conversations into a database. And every Monday or at a set time every week, all of these learnings get summarized and provided to you in a way that describes here's what you've learned in the last week. Now we're going to be building this using agentic automation, where we're going to be building this using agentic automation, and I'm excited for you to see how it works within Notion. So let me first off show you what that looks like for a finished product. So on the screen right here, I have an entry which is automatically populated by my custom agent. So in here, you can see the learning digest for the week. It pulled from 3 counts, so 3 entries. I'm going to show you in a second where the source of this information was from. And you can see what it talks about. It says, okay, I learned, 4 different themes: AI and automation, money management, relationships, and personal productivity. And it goes into detail to say, AI and automation, explored how quickly, product demos, talked about money dials, and then it talked about something I learned from a podcast. And then it provided me with an action that I can apply this week based off of the learnings that I've learned in the previous week. So here's a sample of what this looks like. And for the source of the information, this is where the information came from. I have like 3 entries from the previous week. Just here's what I learned. And you can make this database as robust as you would like or not, or as detailed as you would like or not. I learned about creating videos in Lovable, and then I learned something from the podcast episode of the Diary of a CEO of why most people never finish what they start. So now that I've shown you how it works, I'm going to show you how to create it using the Notion Agents feature. So we're going to go into the agent section. Everyone should have the agent beta on their panel. And once you click on it, it enables you to start a free trial. I think it lasts for about 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, or if not 6 months. But once you're there, you go to plus, which is to create a new Notion agent. What should your custom agent do? You can describe what you want the agent to do. That's a really quick way to do it. There are a couple of templates here, and you can browse to see all different templates that are available within Notion. But we'll be starting with a blank canvas. So by default, give it a name. I'm just going to change this to learning partner or learning assistant. And then here, like I mentioned in the guide, you can see the couple triggers that are already here by default. So you can chat with the agent directly, and it starts it. It runs the agent. When the agent is mentioned on another database, so at Learning Assistant, it triggers it. And then you can add a couple more options. So I just clicked on Add Trigger, and it gives you the options to either add a trigger that's based on a schedule, based on a Slack message getting posted, based on a couple triggers happening in Notion, a calendar, or Notion calendar, or Notion mail. So you can actually also have Gmail, not just Notion mail, and you can have Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, and Notion calendar as your sources as well. So for this, we're just going to pick in on a schedule weekly, I would say on Monday at 8 a.m. Cool. You can set whatever time you want accordingly and then add trigger. Now to the fun part. For this section, we're going to be inputting our instructions, and our instructions have a couple different categories of information or subsections of information within it. Okay, so I just copied over my instructions, which I created getting some help from Claude actually. But basically, you can just describe, you can use the page we'd seen before this where you describe what the agent is supposed to do, or you can do something similar to mine where I start up with Claude and I go through it and fine tune it to make sure that it meets my expectation. So the first subsection has role. So it's you're a personal learning assistant, so you're speaking to the agent, you're describing what its job is supposed to do. So review everything the user has saved and learned for that week, find patterns and themes, and distill into a clear, useful weekly summary. Then we go into the trigger. Though the trigger is here, we also mention the trigger within the body of the instructions as well. Then we mention the data source. So this is the really key part. And this isn't the only place we add the data source. I'll show you where else we add the data source in a second. So data source, we wanted to read from the Learning Vault DB. So remember when I showed that to you earlier, this is where we store all the information that we've learned. Then we wanted to filter for all the entries where the data saved is within the last 7 days. So it's looking behind in the last 7 days and coming up with a plan, a summary, and then a plan of actions for us. So step one, it reads all the new entries from the Learning Vault DB. It groups it by theme. These are the various themes that I've included in my source database, which is where all the summaries get stored. Assign each entry its closest theme. If an entry spans 2 themes, assign it to the most dominant one. Great. Then we're going to write the weekly summary. For each theme, write a theme heading, 2 to 3 sentences, and insights from the entire entry, a bullet list of the specific entries that contributed to this theme. So title, source type. And I'm going to add another piece here. So keep the tone warm, clear, and conversational, like it's summarizing the week back to you. Also, ensure that it's well formatted and starts with greeting, with an inspiring greeting. Not empowering, maybe empowering instead. Okay, friendly greeting. Or maybe encouraging, but yeah, you get the drift. And then I'm actually going to do encouraging friendly greeting, and then write one action recommendation. So based on everything I've learned, identify the single most valuable action the user should take for the next 10 days. So making this specific, this should be, so when you say should, it's a rule. It should be specific, grounded in the contents, and not generic. So don't just pick something random like an action that isn't based on what the user has learned, and format it in this structure. Then all of this information is going to get written into Notion in here. Oops. Just going to click this so we see it's in a wider format. Great. So here we have a table. So create a new page in the weekly summaries DB. So this is where the source, the destination database. So we have the title, the date, the themes covered, summary, body, entry count, which is how many Learning Vault entries. So if I had learned 5 things that week, it's going to put 5. If I learned and I entered 3 things that week, it's going to put 3. And setting this to ready. Now we're going to set a couple global rules. So remember, we had a couple rules within each step, but these are like general rules, and you can make it as elaborate as you'd like, but it's always important to include a couple things. So first off, if it's fewer than 3 entries, still run. Note that it was a light week. Typically it's a whole week. You should have learned more than 3 things, but even if you didn't, it's okay. You still get a summary. Never skip the action recommendation. This is important. Even when it's just minimal entries, always suggest. Write in second person, so addressing the user. So you explored, you're reading this week. Keep the summary to a maximum of 400 words. So if you want it longer, you can expand it beyond 400 words. And do not carry over entries from previous week. Only process items from the last 7 days. So it's not repeated over time. Okay? Because we want to see every new entry has the last 7 days. Every new entry has the last 7 days. Cool. So that's done. We have our instructions, and then now to the fun part. We're going to add a couple things. So here we've mentioned a couple databases. Now, does our agent have access to these databases? No, because in here we see tools and access. Web access I'll come to in a sec, but I just want to show you first of all how to ensure that you've added your databases. So we're going to hit add page. And right here, you can see it off the bat. You could, if you don't see the database you've created, you can search for it. So I'm going to add Learning Vault DB, which is where the user enters what they've learned, and the Weekly Summaries DB, which is the database that has been set up for the new entries that the agent creates to get entered into. Something I forgot to mention at the start, I'm going to put a checklist in the description box below, is to ensure that you create whatever database you're referencing in your instructions, you've created it and you've named the headers appropriately as well. Now here we have can view. We're going to change this to say can edit content. We don't really need the Learning Vault DB to have the agent edit content in there because it's really searching and pulling information. But I just like to keep it as can edit. And then this, we definitely, weekly summaries, the database, we definitely want it to be able to edit content because that's where it's inserting the new entries. Now, if I wanted to add a connection for any of the different apps available here, my calendar, mail, intercom, Stripe, so on, I can do that using the add connection option, but I don't have that as a requirement for this specific agent. I can pick what model. So here you have the model tab, and you can pick what model do you want this agent to run with, what intelligence, what AI intelligence do you want it to use. And I love how there's like the analysis of the speed, the intelligence, the cost for each of these, which is great. But right now, like I said, it's free to try in beta. But once the beta is done, which is May 3rd, there's going to be a cost to it. So right, I usually just leave it on auto so it picks the best one at that time. But if you have a specific preference for any of these, feel free to pick that one specifically. And we're done. So right now I'm going to save this and we are going to run it. And I'm going to come back and show you what difference it would make if we include web access. So remember our triggers. I can manually hit the run agent button for it to run by itself, to run with me hitting it, or I can enter a new chat, or I can mention the agent, or I wait till Monday morning. So let's save the instructions and all the details first. And if you don't see this window typically, here's how you see it. You can pop it open. It's under settings within each agent. So click settings and it opens back up. Okay, let's see, do its magic. I should probably set a timer so we see how long it runs for. Oh, my phone's dead at the moment. Well, awesome. So it's done. So now you can hit open page. I'm actually going to open it from the database so you know for a fact that it entered it in there. So close this and then I'm going to go to our Learning Vault DB. Oh, sorry, Weekly Summaries DB. And then see the new entries here. Remember it was empty earlier, but now it's in here. Then I open, it's like, oh, hey, Yvonne, here's your learning digest. From the past week, you covered a solid mix of building with new tools, strengthening foundations around follow through, and thinking more deeply about money and partnerships. And then it goes into explaining all the different things that I've learned, referencing the source that I got the information from. So, and then, of course, this week's action. So picking one real deliverable you want to ship in the next 7 days. So like a short video walkthrough of one key page on my website, scoping it down to a small loop version and finishing it in one sitting. So basically I just need to find 60 minutes, schedule it, get it done, and know that I've applied the learning from this. So that's our learning assistant in action. Now I'm going to do a second version to add the web search functionality. Okay, so now I'm going back to my learning assistant. I'm going to open, the settings page opened automatically. Close this, hit settings. And here, I am going to add a step 2B. And what step 2B is going to do is not only will it look across all the entries after recurring, I'm also going to have it assign each entry to its closest theme. I'm also going to have it search the web and try to find additional or further reading related to what I've learned. Because there's so many sources of information. And let's say I want to expand my breadth of knowledge on the topic, I would basically have it do that. So I just added 2B, step 2B, which is basically find one relevant resource per theme, and then for each theme, format it this way, search the web for one highly relevant article, tool, or resource included at the bottom of each theme section as further reading, and then it's described this way. Okay, so let's save this. So before we hit run agent, so after we put in this step 2B, we are going to hit web access because we wanted to search the web, and if we don't apply this, it hasn't given the agent the setting to search the web. So just remember to turn this on. I missed turning this on previously, so I had to stop the run and turn this on. So save, and then now we're going to run the agent again. Okay, so now it's done. It's slightly longer than the first run, and we're going to open the page. Let's just expand it so we can see. if it did what it was supposed to do. And then here it said, okay, here's your learning digest from the previous week. And if you notice at the bottom, it says further reading and then it cites it. Now, what we should include in our instructions is I wanted to also include the URL. So I'm actually going to go back and edit my settings to ensure that it includes the URL. Okay. So going back to settings, and this is why it's important to ensure that your instructions are as detailed as like someone who has no idea what they're doing. Search the web for one tool of research included at the bottom of each theme section. Include it and the URL to access it at the bottom of each theme. So title, why it's relevant, and then URL. Okay, and then save. Okay, so now let's run it one more time. Thankfully, the credits are free right now, so run as much as we want. Okay, so now we're done. We're just gonna hit open page. Let's expand this, and if you notice this time around, it included the URL. So for the first one, which is on AI and automation, the further reading is how to get better UI animations in Lovable, practical prompts and approaches for adding polished motion quickly to Lovable built interfaces. For the money dials, it talks about a clear breakdown of money dials, concept examples. You can identify your own. So let's click on this one to see that it's valid. Another pro tip in the global rules, we should mention do not hallucinate and do not include URLs that do not exist. So for when you're recreating this, I would recommend you include that instruction or include that as a rule in your global rules. Okay, and this just talks about, this goes a bit further into money dials if I wanted to learn a bit more on the topic beyond what I've read up in the book, and it gives various examples. So pretty good if you ask me. I love the fact that it includes the URL. So that is, I'm just gonna go back to our home page. Okay, I'm going to show you one last thing. So on the learning assistance, you can see the credits here. So if you're curious to know how much credits you've used, you can see, you can set the monthly limits. The monthly usage so far has been 47, but right here it says they're free during beta. So play around with this. Oh, it's actually May 4th, not May 3rd. And just track your usage like it says here to plan ahead for when it actually costs you money to run your agents. And with that, you created your first Notion agent. I'm excited to see what you create. I'd love for you to share with me in the comment section what you've created. Feel free to share with me topics that you'd like me to cover, and don't forget to subscribe. To like this video if it was super helpful to you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because we'll be covering a lot of practical tools and tips. And don't forget to also subscribe to Substack channel, where we post weekly practical guides on how to leverage AI and automation to launch fast and launch with confidence. Till next time, bye.